Hey everyone, welcome back to Remap Sports and Sports Adjacent Podcast that sets out to disprove the notion that people with lives dedicated to pixels jumping across the screen can't also be unhealthily interested in what nerds condescendingly refer to as sports ball every Super Bowl. As always, I'm joined by my colleague and fellow cursed Bears fan Rob Zachney, but we're also joined this week by my old boss, colleague, person who honestly deserves most of the credit for Remap getting off to a healthy start 2 years ago, former media co-founder Jason Koebler. Jason, thank you for joining us. But as tradition, I start off every podcast with a question. Do you think 404 Media can save us from our increasingly rapid slide into fascism?
Oh yeah, that's my favorite question to answer as well. I don't think that we can. I don't think that we can stop it, but I think that we can inform people what is going on, and I do think that we have been writing a lot about how corporate interests intersect with our government at the moment, and I've been surprised to learn that some corporations still have a bit of shame, and so we've been reporting a lot about Flock, the automated license plate reader company, and how they have some of their customers who are local cops have been collaborating with ICE and have been collaborating to find people who have been seeking abortions and things like that. And I sort of expected Flock to shrug when we wrote these articles, but they actually cut off a lot of service for local cops who were not complying with their rules and stuff like that. So incremental, less badness, I guess I would say we're capable of doing at the moment. And yeah, I think that as more and more people sort of start reading not just our articles, but the articles of people who are reporting on this regime and the corporations that are helping them, I do think that things can get like incrementally better as, you know, there's more collective action and that sort of thing. I don't know. Do you think we can stop fascism? 404 Media and Remap together.
Well, you know, it's funny. Like, you know, you were obviously very instrumental in like the handoff of us from Waypoint to Remap. But another person who was very instrumental in that was Katie Drummond, like who really helped grease a lot of the wheels to like legal stuff behind the scenes to make all that happen. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this before, but like some of my favorite reporting that has happened in this like first half year of the Trump administration's second term has been Drummond's team's reporting at Wired and 404 Media's reporting, which not that there haven't been like pockets of good or traditionalist reporting at like, I mean, not the Washington Post anymore, but like some outlets, like there's been stuff, but it feels like the stuff that is on the pulse of what's actually fucked up and like what is the vibe and the intent of the second Trump administration. I feel like the most interesting stuff, the stuff that's actually caused stuff to shift or identify trends, has happened out of a lot of the tech-focused work that I have seen from you guys, from Wired, and not from the traditional sort of like, like I wonder what's happening like behind the scenes at the White House, like the Maggie Haberman sort of stuff that I feel like defined a lot of the first era of Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think that both we and Wired and a lot of the people who have been doing really good reporting on this administration were in a good spot to cover the Elon Muskification, the AIification of everything, because we had been covering Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley has been trending this way for a really long time. Like we saw it in the worker abuses at Amazon, of course, but then also like the sort of systematic crushing of labor unions at these companies. And sort of the first thing that Musk did at Doge was go after federal workers. And that was like a very similar playbook to what we saw, not just Elon Musk do at Tesla, but like Amazon do with its warehouse workers, and Uber do like over the long period of time with gig workers, just sort of dehumanize them, have them try to algorithmify everything. And so I feel like maybe we were starting from a better spot just in terms of like understanding these issues and understanding this playbook. But I will say that even with the pretty low bar that there is for national media, I've been pretty surprised at how scared they've been. Like, they really are pulling punches in how they're describing this stuff in the stories that they decide to cover and spend their time on. I'm pretty surprised by it, honestly, because, like, yes, Trump has gone after, some like went after 60 minutes for editing a Kamala Harris interview or whatever. Like that's insane. Like uh, had they fought that case, like they absolutely would have won. But who knows, sort of the downstream regulatory impacts of, you know, a fully Trumpified FCC and that sort of thing. But I'm still surprised that all these years later, like we have this huge press that is pretty ineffectual at actually covering what is going on. They seem very good at like getting sources, but then in like contextualizing why this matters and describing it in plain terms, it's like New York Times is still scared to print a cuss word, and it's like it's really crazy. I find it to be really crazy.
You think there's also an element of, like, I think mainstream media is risk averse, but I think contributing to that in some ways is, I don't think a lot of major national reporting outlets and a lot of major national reporters, particularly those in politics, actually know very much about the nuts and bolts of the things they talk about. And so I think, like, my suspicion has always been one reason they pull punches is because they are very insecure about the ground they stand on when they hear two different accounts of how do we describe a technology, a process, what someone is undertaking in Silicon Valley. They are not sure. This is how they end up sort of both sidesing it sometimes, where they're not actually sure who is feeding them bullshit and who is accurately describing reality. And when I think about, like, sort of the very credulous way that Silicon Valley was covered for the last, like, 10, 15, even 20 years, I think some of that stems from sort of an inability to confront these, like, very powerful and very important people with just basic, like, why is the emperor so goddamn naked type questions. And so I sometimes wonder if, like, the national, like, even national reporting outlets have also, like, gutted staff, and there just isn't as much domain expertise as you drill down into the various, like, segments of beats. And, like, to what degree do you think that contributes to the inability to get their arms around the pressing issues of the day?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that on AI specifically, the national press has been so credulous. And I think that they've been incredibly credulous because you have all of Silicon Valley throwing tons and tons and tons of money into this technology that is fundamentally built on stealing, you know, your work, my work, artists' work, musicians' work, there's some knowledge of humankind. And it's like the future of the American economy is sort of riding on big tech's ability to shove this down your throat without you complaining too much. You know, like Google just started trying to write emails for me, even though we've turned that feature off at 404 Media like 7 different times. It just keeps getting re-enabled. And I feel like every company is doing that right now. And if you are like a big national reporter who's writing about AI, you're like, oh, well, you know, Google is a very rich company. Like, they must know what they're doing. And I think that, like, you combine that with politics, where you have the Trump administration and you also had the Biden administration saying, like, China can't beat us on AI. We need to invest in this. You have companies like NVIDIA, like, becoming the richest company in the world based on them selling their GPUs to AI companies. And so I think that a lot of the tech reporters are maybe a little bit better at covering, like, money and the stock market versus how these technologies actually impact people. And then a lot of the investment in these companies comes from, you know, VC firms like A16Z, which is Andreessen Horowitz, which, you know, if you haven't followed what Mark Andreessen has been up to, it's like investing in defense contractors, AI companies, and like boosting right-wing causes. And it's like these
Tim, Palmer Luckey, like there's a whole group of ghouls that are following a similar playbook.
Yeah, and they're so intertwined now, where it's like the AI boosters are the Trump boosters, are the, you know, like the robber barons of our time. And I think that for so long, the tech press was used to just saying, like, oh, Uber's earnings are up, that must be good. Or like Amazon lost money for years and years and years, but now is a huge, like, hugely successful, profitable company because they figured out how to turn a profit after 15 years of losses or whatever. And you have a lot of like tech reporters and political reporters who are like super out of their depth saying, well, surely the same thing is going to happen with AI. And at this point, it's like AI is so inextricable from the government. It's like a huge purpose of Doge was like, let's replace a lot of federal workers with AI and let's invest in AI and let's funnel money to XAI and to SpaceX and, all these sort of Elon Musk companies and his buddies' companies. So I think that, I don't think that there's a lot of expertise because it is a complicated thing. It's like a complicated technology. The way that it works is complicated. It's possible to learn about it, but we had a several year head start. We've been writing about AI for a decade. So I think that helps.
One thing you mentioned was you were surprised about the license plate company that like scans license plates, that they had the capability for shame. I think that actually has defined a lot of this second Trump administration. This sort of second era has been part of one of his great weapons is he cannot be shamed. Hypocrisy doesn't, like, he takes it and then ingests it, and that just becomes part of the process. And that was unique to Trump, but I think has now just become a part of the entire right wing and corporate ecosystem, which I think makes the relationship reporters and reporting has with, like, how do you enact change? Like, often it was like, oh, you find, quote, like seemingly objective wrongdoing, publish it, company makes a change, and like, the world is like slightly better. You're surprised that a company could feel shame and that they were doing something wrong, I think is indicative of like a broader issue with a lot of the reporting and the inability to like catch up with the sharpness of language and contextualization, because just pointing out which used to be seemingly obvious wrongdoing or bad practices is not going to be enough, because those same companies will just flip around and say that was the point. Like, we meant to do that. What do you mean we're doing something wrong? And that's a weird place, I think, for a lot of reporters to find themselves in, where I think all of us have, combined reporting with advocacy or viewpoints to a certain degree. It has sharpened our ability to report, but I think a lot of national reporters are slow on the uptake on that sort of transition and how they approach their reporting. And I think speaks to why Wired 404 is able to speak with sharper language. It's not just a knowledge, but it's also just an understanding of your role in the process. Does that make any sense?
It does, and I think that, back at Motherboard and obviously Waypoint when you were there and still today, it's like we have a perspective on this stuff, but we are still doing reporting. And I think that that's important, and that's something that almost no national outlet allows. It's like when in journalism school, you learn, it's like drilled into your head, like you're not a part of the story. You're not allowed to have an opinion. You're not allowed to, you have to like include both sides of the story, etc., which is how you end up like both sides in climate change and vaccines and things like that. And it's like that model has been broken for a very long time, in my opinion. And you sort of have these like right-wing outlets like Breitbart and Daily Wire and just like, I don't know, name thousands of podcasts where they have a political project and a political perspective. And then to the extent that they report news, they report it with a very specific slant. And that goes extremely viral and is effective. Like, it has been incredibly effective at helping politicians, first at the state and local level, seize control, but then at elevating these people up through the ranks into, Senate seats. And, eventually, like, we have a conspiracy theorist psycho in the White House. And I am not saying that we don't have like a political agenda here, but I think that, everything is political, but it's like 404 Media doesn't exist to like elevate like Democrats,
Right.
But we do exist to say, like, we have reported on this stuff long enough to understand how it impacts society, and then to have a perspective on whether this specific technology or this specific story is good or bad. And so when we write about like automated license plate readers being used by ICE to surveil, undocumented people in Illinois, which is a sanctuary state, like, we are not going to say like, oh, like, well, maybe they'll like catch one bad guy or something, and that's good. It's like,
which would normally like you would report that, and then the idea would be like, well, the reader will decide whether this is too far, and there'll be a quote from the company with like some statistics, and like that would be the extent of it. But it's like, you've done the work, your colleagues have done the work to like, hey, like, we're gonna let you know in the context, like how we frame this story, that like you should share in our skepticism because of like, if you don't understand the skepticism, here's XYZ why you should share in that skepticism. And I think the reluctance to use your own expertise to speak things plainly and then use evidence-based reporting to like convince you of the argument is like sorely lacking in so much media these days.
Yeah, and I don't have it in front of me right now, and it's like the New York Times does this 50 times a day, where it's like, can you use plain language, please? And we've been having this conversation for over a decade. But it was like about Trump's AI like arrest of Obama, etc. And it was like, the headline was something like origins unclear, or like perhaps overstated on like Obama wrongdoings or something. And it's like, Trump like made an AI generated video of like Obama getting perp walked. It's like, not, there's like nothing there. It's insane. And like their headline is so milquetoast. It's like, you know, you would read it and it'd be like, oh, okay, like what are you talking about? But yeah, I mean, I think we just try to, it's like, one, we know the law. Like, we're not out to like libel people and be like crazy about how we're framing things. We do include a quote from Flock in that article, but it's up against the actual framing of the harm that it does. And then the quote ends up seeming like, well, this company is very sad it got caught vibes versus like, yes, we like meant to do this. We meant to help ICE. And if you don't know what Flock is, like very quickly, they're these automated license plate cameras that are in like 7,000 towns around the United States. And basically they started selling these cameras to like neighborhood watch groups in neighborhoods, and it was framed as
there's these like private citizens that are buying them, as opposed to like, you know, I'm sure most people are familiar with like red light cameras and things you'll find in cities that nab you for, you know, speeding through a red light or something like that.
So it's a mix of both. They sell to private citizens if you're affiliated with a neighborhood watch group, which is like a homeowners association group, and you can like sign up and you can put them in your cul-de-sac.
When we make our reactionary turn, Patrick, that's what we're renaming the HOA.
You guys might want to look into it. You know, it could really.
Once Rob has his compound, like we
hey,
feasibly.
Palmer, welcome to the Neighborhood Watch. We're super excited about the home defense tech that Anduril is bringing out to market. And why don't you trigger some libs for us today and tell us what the fall catalog looks like?
Well, hopefully you can connect the license plate readers to Anduril missile systems directly. So it's a mix of homeowners associations and cops. Like, cops do buy them for the city. And the way that it was framed was this company
it's a lot like Ring cameras.
It's very similar to Ring cameras, but they're not catching speeders. They're not catching like red light runners. They're just passively taking pictures of everyone that drives by, and they're putting it into a database. And this was framed as like, we can help you recover stolen cars. So if you're like tired of cars getting stolen in your city, we can show exactly where this car like drove to, and we can help you recover it. And so all these towns like signed up for them, sort of maybe not understanding that they were contributing to a national database. So it's not just like, oh, someone drove by this like stop sign in Bowie, Maryland, but then that car drove across the country to like Des Moines, Iowa, and you can track them all along the way. And so what was happening was ICE was partnering with local police who had access to these cameras, and they were like searching in a national database where they could see like everywhere a car had driven. And it's basically impossible to drive in the United States for any length of time now without driving past one of these cameras. So yeah, that's like what the technology is. And it's being used to track people who have like sought abortions in Texas, for example, like DIY abortions in Texas. It's been used to catch like undocumented immigrants. It's been used for all sorts of like petty crimes that you might not want to like. We might not want the government tracking people like interstate for like shoplifting a 7-Eleven or something. And then of course it is used for violent crime, and the company always points to like the violent criminals that they have been able to find or apprehend or arrest without sort of having this broader conversation about tracking people everywhere.
Also, like, there's a proud history here, right? Of every time police get access to surveillance tech, they start stalking people and invading privacy, right? Like, that's just, like, if it exists and it can, like, creep on people, be it people are interested in or partners, they just start mainlining it.
Yeah, there's that. Like, there are essentially no limits on who the cops can search and what they can search for, and that's a big thing that like the ACLU and the Electronic Frontier Foundation raised with this technology. Is you'd think and hope that you would need a warrant to search for someone's travel history, essentially. But because it's a private company that is creating this database and the private company is contracting directly with cops, they're like, here's this software, use it for whatever. And so you then do have cops who have used it to like stalk people. You know, it's not, there's very, very little oversight of how this stuff is used. And, you know, normally with a warrant, it's like you have to go before a judge and ask, hey, can I track this person? Can I track that person? Can I track this person? And here I've seen emails like from filing the Freedom of Information Act requests where they'll just be emails between cops and they'll be like, yo, can you like look up this license plate and this license plate? And like, can you do this one for my buddy in another town? And it's like, oh, cool. Like what is going on here?
All right. Well, that's one last thing. Do you have a favorite story? Like, it doesn't have to be serious. Like, you've done, like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of really serious stuff you've done over like this, but like, is there something, maybe it's specifically a non-serious story, but one that you thought was really interesting?
I've been obsessed with the Facebook AI slop. Like, I've been writing about it for about a year and a half now.
Every time you drop a hot new Crab Jesus investigation, I'm here to listen and to read and to learn.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's gotten so crazy. Like, my Instagram Reels feed at this point is so horrifying, even to me. Like, I've desensitized myself quite a lot, but it's just like, it'll be like Hillary Clinton morphing into a monster and like lighting the forest on fire in Los Angeles, and then like lightning comes out of the sky and they're like, Obama did this. And it'll be like that was like how the Los Angeles wildfires started. Like, oh, okay, yeah. That's good. That's good.
John
that
McNaughton has to be sweating bullets in this era, right? The little guy who makes the like insane, like mimetic portraits of like patriotic portraits of like Trump surrounded by like the weeping founding fathers and like various symbols of Americana, while like some like gay liberal professor like fucks the Constitution. But like, his stuff basically is AI slop. Like, that dude's gonna be put out of a job. Or maybe he'll just lean into it. Maybe he'll be like, now I can mass produce my art.
Yeah, I got one reel last night when I was looking, and it was a real human being who had put mud all over his body, and he had a voice changer, and he was in his car, and he was like, I am real, I am not AI, but he was mimicking a very viral AI reel that had like 30 million views or something. And I was like, okay, so we have humans who are now like mimicking AI videos, you know, to go viral. So
that is
good times.
Yeah. I do. So when you first brought me on, you know, all of 20 minutes ago, and you talked about Katie and Remap, I had like one of those SpongeBob whoa dude moments, like moment of recognition and realization about a meeting that I had at the end of Vice that I'd never told you about this, just because it like worked out fine.
Sure.
But so I met with one of our lawyers when I was trying to get the subscriber list for Remap. And it was a lawyer I'd never interacted with before. It was just like some other lawyer that Vice was hiding somewhere that did like corporate deals and stuff. And I'd never interacted with this person before, and it was me and Katie and this person. We hop on the resume call, and he gets on and he's like, "Hey, like, 1 second, I'm getting a couch delivered." And he walks off the webcam, and for like 20 minutes, I watch him trying to carry a couch into the back of his apartment with like the help of a delivery person. And like, me and Katie are just like, what is like going on right now? This is like, he didn't turn the webcam off. He didn't put it on mute. He's just like bumping into things. Like, and he finally comes back and he's like, can we like do this call another time? Like, yeah, no problem. And so that was the entire call, was 20 minutes of this guy like moving his couch in. And we eventually had the call and he was like, yeah, like no problem. Like, Patrick and Rob can have it.
Was the
Never
couch
thought
installed?
about that guy again. But he emailed me the other day and he was like, oh, I just saw 404 and like, how's Remap doing? So he remembered. It was
Wow.
good.
That's
good
awesome.
Guy. Not good at moving. It was pretty
Here's
inept.
the thing.
It was an inept move.
Like, okay, more than a little unprofessional. But at the same time, like, these furniture delivery windows are a nightmare. I'm sorry, it's like, it could literally be like the world is ending, and it's like, that futon just showed up. They got the truck parked outside. Like, I'm gonna have to 10 minutes.
I mean, this was New York City, and so it's like you can't leave a person, like a delivery truck, just like idling in traffic for that long. And to be fair to him, you're absolutely right. He's like, I've been waiting for this couch for months. And it has like arrived now. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to why we got together, baseball. Before we get to baseball, pivoting off of what we just chatted about, there's all sorts of weird sports news that's been happening. I only grabbed a couple of things I wanted to chat about here, but one of them, because Jason, you mentioned having some personal history with it, was like, okay, Trump says a lot of things. You got to let most of it slide on by. But I like this hang up that he has recently about wanting the Cleveland Guardians to go back to their old name and the Washington Commanders. And the Guardians, if you don't know, are a baseball team, and then the Washington Commanders are a football team, wanting to go back to their old name. I will simply not repeat their names on this podcast. Washington dropped the name. I forget what the impetus was. And then they became the Washington Football Team, and then they went through a brand transition and became the Washington Commanders, and have been that for the past couple of years. But Jason, you said you grew up in the area, right?
Yeah, I mean, my story is basically that my mom worked at RFK Stadium selling programs for the Washington football team, like in the 70s and 80s, I guess. And so she was a big fan. And growing up, it's like they were really bad at football when I was a child. They also had Dan Snyder, the world's worst owner, and they had a racist name. And so I was just like, I'm not really into this for a variety of reasons. Primarily when I was a kid and I didn't understand, I was like, well, they lose every single game. Like, one of my first memories of football is Gus Frerotte running into like our quarterback. He head butted a wall and like hurt himself, and he was out for months and months. It might have like basically ended his career. I don't fully remember. But to this day, I don't really care about football. Like, I care and follow almost all other sports, but the reason that I don't care about football is because the Commanders were terrible when I was growing up. And then when everyone else, like when I was in college and high school and everyone else was getting into football, I was like, well, they're like racist, and their owner is like a sexual harasser, abuser. Like, it's very hard to root for this. It's like incredibly difficult to root for this.
Trying to grasp onto a reason to care. Yeah.
But then they changed their name. They sold the team, or Dan Snyder sold the team, and they drafted Jaden Daniels, and the Commanders had like an incredible run. And this was the first year that I paid attention to football, and I was like super into it. So I'm bandwagoning back onto the Commanders, and now Trump is like, no, go back to the racist thing.
That's so funny that because we like lots of people have written over the years. We talked about this a lot in sports of like, oh, like how do you get in? And we have a question about this that we'll get into later. But like, how do you get into a sport? Like, if you're tired of your team being bad, is it like treason to like root for another team? Like, how do you negotiate all that? And it's very funny that you have like the most legitimate reasons to have checked out and then get right on the bandwagon at a time in which like they might be fucking awesome for like the next 5 or 6 years, and no one can guilt trip you at all for like jumping on at this exact moment.
Yeah, I mean, I have bandwagoned a few other football teams over the years, just like teams that my friends were into, because I was like, well, I don't really care about the DC team, so I guess I'll root for your team during the playoffs. But my heart was never in it. Whereas this year I was like, oh, like homecoming. My parents were super into this year, obviously, because they had such a good season, and Jaden Daniels is amazing. And yeah, I'm like, okay, maybe it's time for me to get into football. After I skipped all the suffering, I have the capacity to suffer for sports as well, because like I'm a lifelong Baltimore Orioles fan, which we'll probably talk a little bit about.
Talk about
but
that,
like
but
it's
I mean, like the renaming of those teams like really does touch on that like shamelessness, lack of accountability that really has been sort of the driving feature of like, this is the objective. This is part of the project. The right wing project is, fuck yeah, we said it and we'll say it again. So like, bring back the racist mascot for Cleveland and go back to the slur for Washington, because like both those changes are sort of made at a time where it's a combination of factors. Like the NFL wants to be seen as American as apple pie, and they do cozy up to the military, and there's a strong right-wing like Christian bent in the NFL, but they also want to be agnostic, right? They don't want to like alienate dudes like me and Patrick too badly, or dudes like you, and so like there's a point where that name was an embarrassment, and I'm not sure that would have done it, because it didn't do it for years and years, except they also hated the owner. Like the other owners didn't like him, so it was a combination of the NFL really wanted to put the bring the boot down on this one team and this one owner increasingly as they got fed up. With the Cleveland team, it's a similar thing where, what do you mean we can't have a fun, goofy little mascot that's racist as hell? Everyone knows it's a good joke, and like there's like, this is how these things end up becoming. Like there's gonna be just if there aren't already, there will be pictures of like the smiling Indian mascot with like, remember what they took from you on like social media. Like they'll feed it into the AI thing, right? Where it's going to be that mascot and like on the Parthenon or something, and like return. Like that is part of the project, is like, oh, how dare they make us take down our beloved history?
I don't know if you feel like you have a pulse on the Guardians fan base and on the Commanders fan base, but I feel like there was a lot of like harumphing when these changes first got announced. But to the credit of these fan bases, I feel like they got over it relatively quickly. It's like they cared about their sport more than their racism. And maybe it's just the circles that I am in, which don't tend to be right wing in any way. But I really do feel like there was a lot of resistance to changing the DC team's name for a while, and then there was like 1 week of backlash, and then everyone was like, "Oh, it's football season, like let's go."
Also, they like when they suck, it's like a convenient time to like make a change like that. Like the Kansas City Chiefs they should probably change that name too. But they're never going to do that while Mahomes is like an elite. So basically, it's stuck. It's gonna stick around for the next 10 plus years.
There's still a world of difference between like Indian and tribal names are all over sports, and we can go back and forth on like whether that's legitimate at all. There's a appropriative or offensive. In many cases, it is. But
it is a question of scale. You're right.
Difference between like the team is named the Chiefs, and then the Cleveland Indians. Oh, what's their mascot? And I think that's the thing, is it's just like you're right. I think we are in circles where I haven't seen anyone I know like who follows Cleveland baseball give a shit about the change, because like the people we follow in our circles, that it's just not something someone would own up to, where it's like, yeah, I'm really upset that like I've lost this connection to my history. That's just not how that's going to play out. I also do think, yeah, with the Washington football team, there is the issue of, for all the attention that team gets by virtue of being a DC team and having DC media like paying attention to it, they were an irrelevancy. They were an embarrassment. Like, to a degree, I think a lot of people were ready to, like, what history are we clinging to here? This is not like they renamed the Chicago Blackhawks, one of the original 6 franchises. Like, that is wow, we're gonna have to really like break with the past with a whole team identity that has some like real highs and lows. This is just, yeah, our perennial embarrassment of a team now really needs to get rid of a name that's just a slur. It was never, this is never like a thing that, oh, this is just how we honor sort of the native heritage of parts of this country. This was a pointed anti-Jim Crow naming, but we couldn't just explicitly make it about, like, or not anti-Jim Crow. The team was named in reaction to the civil rights movement, if memory serves, just as kind of a, well, you can't stop me from being racist along this axis, and it's sort of a wink and a nod to Potomac area, racists, and like that's the origin. There was never a moment where it was just like, well, we didn't know it was racist. It was intended as a slight from the beginning, which is why you have so many like Cowboys fans and other team fans in the DC area, because like it was rejected by a lot of the people who lived in DC. Cleveland, it's a little more complicated, but also, again, it was one of those things where the wind had shifted, but like really once you just show people like, it's less the name than the way we've decided to depict the name. What do you think of this little guy? And everyone's like, ooh, yeah. So tell me about these River Guardians. Hang on, tell me. I love those guys.
Yeah. There's only two things happening, right? Like, one, I feel like very emblematic of the like change in like acceptable online slurs and tone. Like, okay, like don't use X as like your indicator of everything, even if increasingly online is real life. But like the rapid ascent of like the R word back into just like a word that everybody uses, when I thought we went through a phase in like the late 90s where we all just decided we weren't using the term ableist. We were just like, that seems mean and cruel. You shouldn't use that word anymore. And now it's just common. Like, you just cannot escape that word, alongside like all of the DEI rollover that like every single company has done. Like, it sort of makes sense to a certain extent for Trump to be like, well, literally no one has tried to push back on any of this so far. Like, we might as well push the racism another 5 yards down the line, because we've had a lot of success so far. And all along the same, but all at the same time, DC is also trying to get a stadium deal over the finish line. And I fully expect, in the same way that, yes, could CBS have pushed back on the Kamala Harris lawsuit? Sure. But they wanted this Paramount sale to happen. And in the same way that I don't think they're going to succeed at getting a rollback on the Commander's name, but I wouldn't be shocked if Trump makes them squirm in an effort to, mess with building another stadium in DC over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's a depressingly good point. And I could see him trying that avenue. I didn't know that there was like millions of shitheads just desperate to say the R word again. Like, I was like, oh, we've agreed as a society that this is like really messed up. And I guess I wonder if people feel that way about these team names, where they're sort of not complaining about it publicly, but then like one comedian gets away with it, and then a politician gets away with it, and then it's like, oh, the floodgates are open, like we're gonna bring this team name back, we're gonna reclaim it. Like, I guess I could see that, and that's like really depressing to think about.
My theory about that, though, is like the dudes who are like, I'm just gonna use the R slur all the time. Not to be like, back in my day we used it, but like they overuse it, where it's like, holy shit, like there's a lot of words you do. There's so many different ways to be mean, but like you just go into this one like a ton, and it's kind of got this like try hard affect to it. And I think that fits with like Elon Musk's whole try hard loser trying to fit in. And so I think these things, it's not that there's, I think, necessarily groundswell of people who are like nostalgic for like, let me go back to my culture where we just like, you know, it's not that. I think it's like sort of the online like right-wing reactionary thing is a bunch of poorly socialized losers who are trying to signal that they like belong to an in-group and create an in-group. And so they latch onto these things, but it's not their native language. It's not their native culture. These are dudes who like even in like forums of the 90s and shit would have been like, dude, this guy fucking sucks. Like these are guys that like mods would eventually have to be like, sorry, dude, like your posting privileges are revoked. Just like
shadow banned. You can post and nobody can see it.
Yeah.
The old something awful rules.
And the dudes who are sort of bringing this back are like, no, in any timeline, any time and place, you guys would have been the fucking losers. Like you're acting like, you know what? Hey, good news, everybody. I made it so we can use that word we all loved again. And the people who like did use that word and like were like sort of online like dipshit scumbags, a lot of them have moved on from it. And I think that's the extra like infuriating thing about this era of like so much of what the right wing does is about like resentment over losing the culture. And a lot of like Gamergate and its associated movements is a backlash against feeling like they were losing online culture and gamer culture and like having that sort of grow up and move on and saying like, fuck you, I refuse to. But they were never the culture makers. That's why like things were moving on, because increasingly people were like, nah, this is just similar to like, hey, what do you think of this mascot? Nope. All right. No further discussion needed. A lot of progress is going along those lines where it's like, hey, you know what this word means and like how it lands with a lot of different groups. And I was like, yeah, no, we should probably just knock that shit off. And the people who are trying to bring it back are pissed at any sort of progress on those lines and are like, no, we're going to make it so that our definition of online culture becomes like the dominant one. And the acquisition of Twitter is kind of the brute forcing of that, right? Where it's like, I'm Mr. Meme Lord by buying like the meme site. And you know, by all accounts, like the dude is one of the least funny, likable people in history.
All right, I think that's really well said. Yeah, I don't have anything to add there.
Well, we're gonna take a really brief break, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about baseball as we head to the MLB trade deadline. Some teams are doing better than others right now, based on who enjoys and who roots for certain teams on this podcast. But we will be right back.